Welcome everybody. We are so pleased to have everybody here today for our inaugural start of the Smell and Taste Association of North America Book Club. My name is Pamela Silverman, as Katie said, and I'm one of the founders of the Smell and Taste Association, along with our expert advisors, Dr. Paulie Joseph, Dr. Nancy Rosen, and Jennifer Trackman, who's here with us. And importantly, our other patient founders who are also here today, Marge Rosner and Katie Boateng. And similar to Marge and Katie, I'm an acquired anosmic, and I lost my sense of smell from a sinus infection over 13 years ago. We launched this book club with the idea that we wanted to create a safe space for people in the patient community and provide a way for us to get together, talk about some interesting topics, but also get an opportunity to share our experiences. As we said, this is the first session. We've selected books for 3 other sessions that we'll talk about later in the year. And we'll provide the link to register for those sessions. We'll provide the next session link. We'll provide that in the chat before we close out today. Today we have an hour to explore the scent of desire, discovering our enigmatic sense of smell with its author, Dr. Rachel Herz. And we're going to start with a conversation between Katie and Dr. Herz. And then open it up for discussion for everybody on the Zoom. And just to give a couple of ground rules, we just wanted to reconfirm or restate that we are recording the session, and we're doing that so that we can post it on our YouTube channel, and anybody who missed it today can watch on the channel. We're going to ask that everybody start under mute, and when we open it up for discussion, if you go to your Zoom, your Zoom controls, you can use your reaction button to put your hand up on the Zoom, or you can put a question in the chat or put a comment in the chat. And so we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to, say what's on your mind or ask a question to Dr. Herz. We do ask that you're just, everybody's respectful of each other. We do want this to be a comfortable environment for everybody to share their thoughts and ideas. And we'd love to see you when you speak. If you would put yourself on camera, that's great if you're comfortable doing that. And when asking a question, we do want to get to know everybody. So please tell us your name. We talked a little bit about where people are located, but just restate where you're located and what your connection is to the taste and smell world, and sort of what brought you here today, and then pose your question. With that, I'd like to introduce Katie and Dr. Herz. Katie Boateng is one of the co-founders of the Smell and Taste Association of North America, which we're calling STANA for short. Katie's an acquired anosmic. She lost her sense of smell due to a post-viral infection in late 2008, early 2009. Katie created the Smell podcast in August of 2018 to share listener stories and scientific research and news about the world of smell. Since she launched the podcast while she was also serving as an undergraduate admissions counselor, and since its launch, she's hosted and recorded over 100 interviews with patients and experts on a wide range of topics relating to smell. Katie's also a Fifth Sense ambassador and a member of the patient advocacy committee of the Global Consortium for Chemosensory Research. It is our honor to have Dr. Herz here today. Dr. Herz is a neuroscientist and a world-renowned expert on the psychological science of smell. Beginning as an undergraduate biology major, and later she pursued her master's and her PhD. Dr. Herz has been conducting research on smell, emotion, perception, motivated behavior, and cognition since 1990. Dr. Herz is a sought-after speaker and a published author of several books and close to 100 original research papers. She's also on the faculty at Brown University and Boston College, and a professional consultant to various aroma chemical industries. Dr. Herz is frequently called upon as an expert witness in legal cases involving olfaction. I'd like to welcome Katie and Dr. Herz.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, thanks everyone. So we're so excited. We'll go ahead and jump right in. So we are talking about the book today. Hopefully, if you haven't had the chance to read it, today's conversation will still be really great for you, and you can finish it or read it afterwards. I'm a part of another book club, and we have people who come all the time who haven't quite finished it. So kind of to dive right in, we're going to start, Dr. Herz, with some questions for you. So I wanted to know, after reading this book, it's always interesting to me to kind of find out what motivated the author. So what got you interested in writing this book to begin with, and what was that process like for you?
So thank you for that question. So actually, and thank you, Pamela, for mentioning the fact that I do expert witness work, because actually it was the very first time that I was asked to be an expert witness with someone who had lost their sense of smell. In this particular case, it was a car accident. And I had worked with a couple of people who had anosmia before, acquired anosmia, but this was the first time I really got involved with someone who had lost her sense of smell. And it was sort of, this person still is the sort of quintessential, I mean, unfortunately, everything kind of going wrong in her life as a function of it, but also someone who completely took her sense of smell for granted beforehand and had no idea how much it was involved in every aspect of her life. So I spent a lot of time talking with this woman and finding out, everything about her so that I could represent her to the insurance company, who wanted to give her basically a penny, because who cares about the fact that you lost your sense of smell? It's not vision or something, where I'm sure you all know that the American Medical Association values the loss of smell is between 1% to 5% of someone's sort of life worth in terms of work and compensation, whereas vision is given 85%. So, they didn't really want to pay out anything. And yet her life had completely fallen to pieces, to the point where she actually couldn't do her job anymore because of these sort of analytical and spatial and memory connections that the smell loss was contributing to, a decline in. And I should say that I met her about a year and a half after she lost her sense of smell. So she'd actually gone through a couple of cosmetic surgeries because her face was really badly injured from the accident. And so everything was put back to normal by the time I met her. And it wasn't, immediately that she realized all the decrements of smell loss, so I sort of unfortunately met her at a perfect time to really get her reactions to the world around her. And I mean, her work life, her intimate life, she had originally wanted to have a family, and she was newly married, that she decided she didn't want to have children anymore because she was worried about not being able to, smell danger or bond with a child properly because she couldn't smell her infant. And all kinds of other things. I mean, her sexual relationship with her husband, her feelings of socializing, she was afraid to go out. She got really paranoid. And then, of sort of body odor issues and other kinds of things, which sort of escalated, and sort of fed off themselves. And then also fed into, really unfortunately, a very serious depression that she had developed. And really as a function of this, and I'm sure you kind of all know the neuroanatomy and what sort of supports, unfortunately, that connection, which doesn't happen to everybody, but can happen and can get worse with time. So I was so, I suppose, taken aback is the wrong word, but I was so touched and moved and sort of shocked by how much this woman's life had changed, that I really felt compelled to, and of course, I love the sense of smell, and my primary connection in terms of talking to people is people who are fully osmic, and never really sort of recognizing what the other side of that equation was like until I met this person. And then having this really, deep interaction with her and realizing how much it was really a detriment. And therefore sort of wanting to shake people and say, you've got to pay attention to your sense of smell while you have it, you're so lucky. And so that's really what made me want to write that book. So it was really to get the average person to say, oh my goodness, I have this amazing sense I've completely ignored because I just think about vision or hearing or the basic things that people think about, and have really no idea how important my sense of smell is. And then of course I also wanted to reach the community of people who had lost their sense of smell, and to sort of provide in a way an outlet, a realization. I don't know how much there was, support groups at the time for this. I don't really think that there was. I mean, I met her in 2004. So, in terms of like real communities, and especially not online communities, there wasn't anything. And so I wanted to sort of portray that this happens to people, you're not alone. And to the best of my ability, I hope I can sort of represent what that might be like, with a fully functional sense of smell. I've been told that I somehow get it, so I'm glad.
That's amazing. So you mentioned that you got connected with this woman because you were being used as an expert witness. So my question, and you touch on this a little bit in the book, but basically, why smell? Why have you decided to dedicate your career to this field, and how did you kind of launch into that space to begin with?
So thank you again, Pamela, for bringing up my biology undergraduate background, because that's sort of the perfect segue. So I had done my undergraduate degree in biology, I did an honors thesis, and I actually sort of, at the time, it was called biopsychology. Nowadays, it would be called neuroscience, but I worked with someone who was in the psychology department, and he was working with animal models of schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease and also drug addiction. So I, did stuff with rats and injected them with things and tested them and then sacrificed them, as we say, and then, looked at their brains and a few other little details. And realized while I was doing that, actually, that I really wasn't comfortable with the whole animal, I don't want to say abuse, but I mean, because, depending upon how you look at it, it can be really relevant. But I decided I didn't want to work with animals. And I had realized also at that time that I was interested in people, and I started my master's degree, though, because I was sort of a little unsure what working with people and not animals, but coming from a biology background meant. I started working in an evolutionary biology lab in also another psychology department, because psychology can be extremely broad. And in this case, I was looking at how black-capped chickadees, the bird, find their seeds and then store them and then find them again. So memory for food caching. And we actually, my supervisor and I went out into the woods. This is in Ontario, so I'm actually Canadian. And I did my PhD and my master's at the University of Toronto. And we went out into the woods in the winter and caught birds. This was like not what I thought I'd signed up for. And then, I built an apparatus, I tested these things, but I realized during this process that really, bird brains, love them, kind of thing. But this really wasn't what I was all about. And I realized it was really people, it was sort of emotion, it was the connection between biology and psychology. And not to give a too long-winded story, but I actually then transferred for the start of my PhD into doing sleep research, which actually I've still continued to do, and actually looking at how smell sensitivity is affected by sleep and also circadian rhythms. But for various reasons, I was told after doing a year of that I couldn't continue doing that. I needed to find something else. And so through a long circuitous path, I ended up with someone who was an emotion psychologist and trying to figure out how to connect my biology background to this very sort of more straightforward psychology, social psychology person. I actually was taking a course where I read a paper and the researchers used smell to manipulate mood. And this was the first time this had ever been done. And they gave this little paragraph explanation about why this was sort of based on biology and evolution and the brain. And this is why it was this perfect modality to look at emotion in kind of a pure way. And I thought, aha, now I know what I can look at. And I'd always been interested in memory from before, and like the birds when finding their seeds. So I thought, I know what I can look at. And I always had been sort of a little bit stumped by this sort of affirmation or assertion that was kind of out there that smell is the best sense in terms of being connected to memory. And I remember asking, supervisors and so on, and why is that? And getting these vague, just because answers. And so I decided to look at that. What is the real connection between smell and emotional memory? And is there something special about that? And kind of the rest is history.
That's amazing. So one thing at the beginning of the book that I wanted to touch on is that you referenced this study, I think it's Paul Rosen did with the University of Pennsylvania. And he basically gave out a questionnaire that was asking people to rank the value of losing various physical attributes, and smell ranked the lowest. And I know that you have an update to that, so I want to ask you about that. So in light of COVID-19, has that changed? Do people still rank smell the lowest? And I know you've done a study recently, so if you could kind of expand on that for us.
Yeah, sure. So actually what Paul Rosen's study showed was that people ranked losing their little left toe as basically equivalent to losing their sense of smell. And he didn't compare all kinds of things. It was hearing in one ear, little left toe, or your complete sense of smell. And that was published in I think 1999, 98, something along those lines. And I had been wondering over the last couple of years, and especially with the backdrop of COVID and so much media attention brought to smell, and over, starting probably, not long after COVID started, I got very much into the smell research and started giving lots and lots of talks over the next, year and a half about COVID and smell loss and all kinds of things like this. I'm like, well, this is really the moment when smell is being really recognized by the public, and isn't this great, and it's going to be, people really have this newfound appreciation. I mean, I was meeting people who were saying, I had COVID really badly, like I wasn't in the hospital, but I was like sicker than I've ever been in my entire life, and I lost my sense of smell during it, and that was the worst thing for me. So I'm like, I mean, not amazing, but amazing that you realize that this is so incredibly important. And so I thought, well, maybe the general zeitgeist has changed. People are going to it's going to seem that people are going to care a lot more about their sense of smell. And so I did a study with another colleague of mine who is Martha Bajek. She actually does taste research, generally speaking, but she helped me put together this questionnaire and help me analyze the data. And also, so I disseminated it far and wide. I disseminated it to 2 undergraduate populations, one Boston College and the other Brown, that I'm connected to. And then also over social media, with not people that have any, smell and taste connections, but sort of people that don't have smell and taste connections, and ask their friends and so forth. So I had about 200 or so people in each age group and each kind of life space group, and had questions that were to compare the value of the sense of smell with vision and hearing, and also comparing each of those senses to various common commodities, like your cell phone, or your little left toe, or your hair, or a dream vacation. And across the board, I wanted to kind of look at different levels of commodities. So some that, maybe more trivial, others that are more important, others that are more emotional. And although this study exactly wasn't done 20 years ago, was stunned at how little the sense of smell was actually given value. So the title of the paper is Your Money or Your Sense of Smell. And over the whole thing, the whole population, 20% of people would rather keep $10,000 than keep their sense of smell. In the undergraduate group, 25% of undergraduates would rather keep their cell phone than their sense of smell. When the older people get at it, it goes, a little bit down. It's like a little under 20%, but still shocking. Across the board, 50% of women would rather keep their hair than their sense of smell. So, I mean, it was just kind of stunning. And of course, compared to vision and hearing, I mean, it's like, vision and hearing up here. And interestingly, vision and hearing did not vary very much in terms of each other. So, I mean, there was a little bit less value placed on hearing than vision, but both of them were really high. And in a lot of cases, compared to the various commodities, there was no difference. So you have vision and hearing, rank supreme, and smell way down, like shocking amount of difference between the two. I didn't look at touch or taste. I mean, part of the problem was because this was being administered online and I couldn't really give any explanations. With touch, I was worried people might either just think of pain or they might think of sexual things. And I wanted, as opposed to sort of more direct sensory things. And with taste, I figured people would just think food, even though obviously that is involved with smell. People most likely don't think about that. So I wanted to make it sort of simpler and more straightforward, since I couldn't give a lot of explanation. So I was really quite stunned that the current milieu has not risen the value of the sense of smell more, in terms of the general public. I mean, who knows, maybe if I would have done this, 5 years ago, it would have been even crazier. Maybe it was like, 50% of the college students would rather keep their cell phone, but I kind of doubt it. I think that age group in particular they really don't understand. And I think most people really still, who have a sense of smell, don't understand what they're really possibly giving up. And it just strikes me as so amazing or shocking that here you have a sensory system through which you navigate the world. And that compared to various common commodities that you can replace or do other kinds of things to mitigate the loss, and still the sense of smell is just not valued in any real way. It's just amazing. Anyway, this paper is actually open access. I think I sent a copy to Katie, and if you have it on the website, so if you want to look at the stats, there's a lot of sound bites come out of that paper in a bad way.
We can definitely, let me look for if I can add it to the chat somehow. And if not, if anyone's interested, we can always email you the link or the actual paper that Dr. Herz sent over so you can see it. But I was reviewing it too, and I was also surprised that in light of COVID, things don't seem to have improved at all in terms of people appreciating the sense of smell. Okay, so
can I just ask, can you post that on the website, or do you have links to papers? Because I think that, maybe it would be useful, just even people who are looking for you, just in the World Wide Web to like, get educational resources. I don't know if you have that, but.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is I can send it to everyone after the fact, or actually, Stephanie did it. Thank you, Stephanie Fuhrer, who's on the chat. I appreciate that. So everyone, if you click on that link, Stephanie put that in there for you. Great. So I kind of want to pivot, and I want to talk a little bit about something that you mentioned in the book as well. And so you talk about smell loss and its links to dementia. And can you talk a little bit more about what does science say about that? And then obviously people like myself who have acquired anosmia, should we be terrified, or how does that impact us?
Great, thank you for mentioning that. So what I mentioned in the book is really just kind of very tangentially the issue that often people who are elderly and live alone, if they have lost their sense of smell, and most people, as they get older, don't sort of realize the gradual decline that's taking place, because it's not sort of all or none. It's just sort of, it's getting weaker and weaker, and their experience of food is getting sort of blander and blander, and they're adding, more condiments, but they're not really realizing that their sense of smell is what's imperiled. And if you live alone and you don't have a sense of smell, and you're not getting cued for, your appetite properly, or, you're missing meals, or you're not eating in a nutritious way, you can actually develop symptoms that look like dementia. But once you're put on, like, your diet is improved, you're back to being normal. So this was kind of just a wake-up call that if you're living alone, or if you know people who are living alone and they're not getting proper nutrition, that they seem to be acting in a way that suggests serious impairments, that in fact it may not be dementia, it could just be smell loss, but it could be smell loss instead, and that addressing the issues that smell loss is responsible for causing, like not eating properly, then that will actually make that person come back to full functioning. So at that time, it wasn't known. I mean, this is one of the things that's really happened over the last couple of years, and smell training in particular, also connected to COVID, has really sort of ignited research in this area, is the connection between a functioning sense of smell and general cognitive health in regular, no matter how old you are, and then also in aging. I mean, it was known for a long time, it has been known for a long time, how smell loss is a very, very early warning symptom for both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, well before any of the other impairments are manifested, and sometimes up to a decade or more before. And how important it is, if this is recognized as a potential harbinger of what's to come, that treatment is started as soon as possible, because all the evidence shows that the earlier you have treatment, then the better the outcomes and the prognosis generally is. So, but more recently, a lot of work has actually been done using smell training, and not just in terms of helping people regain their sense of smell if they've lost it in some types of ways. It seems to be more successful than others, but also just engaging in this sort of deliberate active sniffing, even if you can't really, even if you have a sense of smell, or if it's weak, or even if it's not, just still trying to sort of think about what might this be connected to, sort of trying to sort of think and smell. And in any case, seems to have a positive impact on general cognition, and seems to be actually helpful for thwarting the potential dementia, or at least diminishing, the possible sort of memory loss and other kinds of cognitive loss that happen with aging, and actually also increasing sort of general cognitive capacity overall. So that's sort of the latest, greatest connection, and people recognizing sort of, smell and neurological health. And also it's been shown that their sense of smell is really a harbinger to the general well-being and functioning of the body. And this is where people who, not so much, I got an illness, or I had an injury and I got anosmia, but rather that, I should actually have a proper functioning sense of smell. For whatever reason, I don't have it. And the likelihood of early mortality is really expanded in that group, even when all other things are taken into consideration, lifestyle, other illnesses, etc. So, but what I want to say in terms of not being worried about it is, first of all, the issue with connecting to, nutrition and cognitive health, since you all know that you don't have a sense of smell and how important that could be to food, just being vigilant, like, am I eating properly, making sure you're eating nutritious food, just sort of in general, sort of just being aware of that. That would be sort of just one thing just to know. And I mean, this is simple-minded. I'm sure you all know that. But the other thing is, so not to be too worried that, smell training may not work for you, but it seems as if all of our senses actually are very much involved in our cognitive functioning, and making sure to sort of deliberately activate them and engage yourself with them is actually part of what sort of keeps your brain healthy and young and functioning properly. So when I talk to people who do vision research or hearing research, they go, oh, wait. Well, with hearing, it's definitely the case that if you can hear better, your cognition is better and your health is better and so on. And that's why hearing aids are so important and so forth. So not only that, I mean, I don't know that there are sort of real exercises out there that sort of tap into using, let's say, hearing. Vision seems a little kind of harder to sort of figure out how you might do this, but maybe if, listening to different pieces of music sort of deliberately and thinking about what is this connected to in my life, and sort of giving yourself a little sort of mental exercise routine. Basically, anything that's a mental exercise routine is going to be helpful. And also, especially if you can bring in a multi-sensory kind of and cognitive component. So you're activating not just, oh, I'm thinking about that time, but actually engaging a sense and then thinking about that time and combining them together. So just sort of more mental interactivity is just good for your brain overall. So I think like I'm just making this up kind of right now, but like if you have a selection of different passages of music that you like, kind of playing them regularly, thinking about what they mean to you. That this could be different than just listening to music sort of in the background or because you like it, but kind of developing sort of your own personal little exercise, let's just say, with music. And then that in and of itself will be, I think, a very good cognitive enrichment tool. And if you do know that you have any impairments developing in any of your other senses, that you definitely address that, so that to make sure that you're highly functioning in other sensory capacities.
That's great. So just to point out some of the conversations from the chat, so far, Sumi has said great discussion. Thanks for the link. So we have that paper shared with everyone. Linda, you mentioned that you're a congenital anosmic. So all of this is really fascinating to you, things that you've never thought about before. And then Michelle, you have a question. So do you want to go ahead and I can read it, or would you like to ask Dr. Herz directly?
I can ask. By the way, this is really interesting. Thank you. So far. So I have, I had COVID in February of 2021, and I went completely blank with smell and taste. I started in a study, I think in July of 2021 with Columbia University, and that's when he gave me the oils to start with. Mm-hmm. And so I had not been doing any smell training until that point. I started with the 4 normal ones and pretty limited smell with those. And as time went on, the smells got stronger, although I can barely smell them if they're like less than an inch from my nose. I mean, they have to be close. And then I went ahead and got the next 4. I guess there's like a round of 12. And so I got the next 4 and I have those here. And I can smell them all. I know what they are. Occasionally I have a parosmia where oils and sweet smells like deodorants and shampoos and things are just very, very powerfully obnoxious and strong. Oils in particular remind me of tortilla chips. My dog to me smells like a tortilla chip. I don't know why. It's awful. And I love him and I don't care and I sniff him anyway, but I still think he smells like a tortilla chip. But I know that's not real. And I wonder, is there any research about the recovery for people like myself? And I do have some very, very limited taste. And I mean limited, like I'm talking maybe I have more than 10 things, but I can only identify 10 things right now that I've written down. So I eat with texture, as I'm sure most of the other people on here do too as well. So I wonder, is there any research about people like myself who have this ability to smell oils, have the parosmia with the anosmia? Oh, I do smell cigarettes outside occasionally, but not as much as strong as I used to when people were like blowing it all the place. And I wonder, is there any research on that, on recovery for people like myself? Absolutely.
So first, I just want to make a little comment about your dog smelling like tortilla chips. So actually, dog feet have bacteria on them sort of naturally and paws that smell like, I mean, I think my dog's paws smell like Fritos. So I think, I mean,
everyone says Fritos. We used to call it toast paws before I had this, before
okay,
this.
so, but you're saying this is different? This is different?
It's his whole body. It's his
Okay.
whole body.
Well, maybe actually you're picking up something that's there on his whole body that most people are actually not picking up. I mean, so I would actually say, so there is research showing that people who have lost their sense of smell and then start regaining it, you know, even if very weakly, but then get this parosmia effect, are actually much more likely to regain full sense of smell than people who are still like not really getting anything. So even though it's unpleasant, it's actually a good sign that your sense of smell is evolving back to normalcy. So there is research showing that parosmia is kind of an intermediate step along the way to recovery of normal smell function. So
I do read a lot about people who have parosmia with absent, you know, and those people seem to have it for like 1 or 2 years, and it's like nonstop and it's crazy and it's ongoing. Mine has never been that way. Like I don't smell trash or garbage or all that stuff. Mine just kind of comes in waves of an hour, 2 hours, maybe a half an hour. And then I wonder, is my parosmia not strong enough? You know, is it like, you know, I think about these things.
I totally get that. I mean, actually, because you're saying that you can actually smell some things sort of the way they're supposed to be, and you're getting, you know, they're good smells, you're getting that as well. I would say that you're kind of in a perfect place. So getting parosmia occasionally as opposed to all the time is obviously better just in terms of your quality of life. And the fact that you are getting more of your sense of smell back in general, I think that both the things are kind of going in line with each other, and that over time you should have the parosmia less and less and your normal sense of smell more and more. So I don't think it's a problem that you're not getting parosmia all the time. I think that it's basically,
I have to think this way is crazy, right? I mean,
yeah. I'm just curious with respect to what you said about your sense of taste. Is it the case that if you were to like taste the salt water, you couldn't tell if it was salty, or like just?
So I have the 5, you know, I can taste the sweet, salt, umami. I can taste all of that. I used to love spicy, but now it burns my lips. Don't ask me what that's about, but can't do anything spicy anymore. I had to stop eating salt because I was salting everything, because I thought I was like, I was eating food so bland. I started salting everything, and then I started to swell up. So I had to stop that. I can taste that. But I started really concentrating on things like bananas, raspberries, cucumbers, carrots. I'm a vegetarian. You know, lemon's a good one. Very few things. I mean, I'm not lying. There's very few things. Toothpaste. I feel like I can taste toothpaste, but then after about 15, 20 minutes when I'm done brushing my teeth, I get like a weird taste in my mouth, and I'm like, bleh. I don't know if it's like weird toothpaste flavor. Like my mouth starts to taste weird. It's weird.
So
Yeah.
Dr. Herz, maybe to me, being a non-expert, maybe could you expand a little bit on the difference between like taste and flavor?
Yes, that's just what I was going to do. So Michelle, actually, you do have a functioning sense of taste, which is great. What you're missing is flavor, and specifically it's called in the scientific world retronasal olfaction. So normally when we eat food, we have the aroma molecules from the food in our mouth are actually coming up into our nose through an opening that's at the back of the mouth. So like if you were a kid and you used to, like, let's say, keep something in your mouth, and you'd be like laughing your head off and trying not to, you know, spit it out. And occasionally sometimes it came out your nose. I don't know if that ever happened to anyone.
Yeah.
Certainly, my friend and I used to like try to make each other laugh when we had food in our mouth, and this used to happen. But anyway, so that just shows you how there's this open airway passage. And also, if you like had a bad cold and felt that blockage and food doesn't taste right, it's because that airway passage is blocked with mucus. So as a function of the fact that your sense of smell is impaired, you know, the aroma molecules in your mouth that are being released from chewing and so forth, they're going up that airway passage, but they're not activating the receptors in a powerful enough way for you to really get the sensation that you're looking for. Now, I don't know, and other people who actually work on this more so than I, if they're in terms of recovery from something like COVID, if there's a difference in the trajectory for the retronasal versus the orthonasal, which is directly through the nostrils, because when people who study olfaction, there are differences sort of just normally in terms of intensity and perception when we're sniffing something versus eating something. So I'm wondering if, you know, as just like there are differences in the normal sort of way these two pathways work, that maybe, you know, the retronasal olfaction, the flavor component of food is different in terms of recovery. But I would also assume that as things come back to normal with your sense of smell, that you're going to get a more fully functioning sort of feeling of flavor with food as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm trying to remain optimistic. I got to tell you, this has thrown me right over the edge.
Thank you, Dr. Herz. for
Thank you very
addressing
much,
that.
though.
Pamela, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I do. In reading the book, you gave us a lot of examples of how we learn at an early age. We have certain experiences, which then inform how we connect to, you know, our sense of smell. But I'm glad Linda's here, because a lot of the times I was reading that, I was thinking about a congenital anosmic. Like, what if you never could, you know, you never had a sense of smell? So, you know, how do the things you were talking about relate in that example?
That's an excellent question. Maybe Linda can help me answer this. I mean, in terms of the experiences that we learn that are smell based, so, you know, whether I like the smell or not, or what it means to me as a function of, you know, my experience when I was first smelling this, and because in childhood that's when most things are new to us, so we're learning everything, and it's the first time you smell roses and skunks and cheese and bananas and everything else. So how you're learning about those smells and flavors take place often, you know, when we're young, although any time in life when we come across a new scent, the meaning of that scent and the connections we have and in that moment are going to become attached to it. Now, in terms of our experiences of the world through smell, you know, for someone who's never had a sense of smell, that's actually, I mean, because congenital anosmia is relatively rare and sort of getting enough people to sort of do proper research studies, I don't think that there has really been anything systematic or sort of well conducted that really sort of sketches out what it is like for all kinds of aspects of life with congenital anosmia. I mean, I can say that from sort of an emotional health perspective, congenital anosmics generally do much better than people who have acquired anosmia, because it's not like you had it and you lost it and all kinds of things which you relied on your sense of smell for are suddenly gone, because people who have the congenital anosmia have figured out how to navigate the world perfectly well with the senses that they have. So, I mean, life, I think, is quite a lot different. And I don't know, Linda, if you could please illuminate me and everyone else here about how you feel your experiences are.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure I was off mute. You're right. You know, I think as I listen, and I also do some stuff with the Fifth Sense organization, and they have acquired anosmics. A lot of times I do feel that it's better that I never had a sense of smell, because that part I don't know what I'm missing. And people talk a lot about, you know, the smell will trigger a memory. Obviously, I can't do that because I never had the smell. I've got the trigeminal nerve activation, but that's, you know, a very different thing. But I find I rely, and I don't know if it's compensation or just how my brain is structured because of other things, that I rely a lot on visual memories. You know, I can remember sitting, people talk about smelling rain, and I can't do that, but I can remember being 3 years old and watching a heavy rainstorm making bubbles on the sidewalk and having them drift down, being with my dad at a water wheel. It's all visual, and maybe that's my way of compensating. I don't know. There's no way of knowing. And as you say, until COVID, there was really no discussion about anosmia. And you know, I've just gone through my life for almost 75 years, and just like it has its good points, its bad points, it's got its dangers. If my gas stove goes off, I don't know it, but the rest of my life is pretty normal as far as I'm concerned.
Linda, can you taste?
It's probably reduced. I think you talked about texture. I can get the basic tastes. I cannot. Vegetables are green. I know peppers, green peppers, because they're a little bit bitter and they've got more moisture. Seasonings, herbs, spices, I can't tell apart. So I rely a lot, you know, I love Triscuits because you've got the salt crystals and the crunchy fiber of the
Mhm.
biscuit. Um, Big, thick steak fries that are
Mhm.
crunchy on the outside and the soft potato on the inside. I'm very much a texture person. Yeah. But
Mhm.
my sense of taste is probably reduced, but I don't know because I have no reference. But yeah, herbs and
Interesting.
spices and vegetables, they're like, Cool Ranch Doritos. I don't know. I'm just seeing the thing that popped up in the chat. Yeah, it is probably very. Well, somebody said I reheated something with garlic, some Asian dish, and now because it's heated, I could have in theory smelled the garlic because again it's the trigeminal nerve activation. I can't smell it. I need a lot of garlic to smell the garlic. But yeah,
Well,
thank you.
yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I would actually just make a comment. I don't think you're compensating because it's not like you're using something that, to take the place of something else. This is just how you exist, and it's
Yeah,
fully fleshed out. You're not making up for something. And I think that's where, congenital anosmics have an advantage over people who've lost their sense of smell, who are trying to compensate because of figuring out how to fill in the blanks. But you have your full world fully mapped out for you, and that's great. And I think that's one of the reasons why congenital anosmics do so much better, is because they have a full world. It's just like people who are missing another sense, their world is full.
yeah, no, I would agree. That's a better phrasing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Marge, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
I do. So in reading your book, one thing that struck me was the connection between memories and smell. And I've always had a stronger connection between music and memories. And so it started me thinking, did I not have a very strong sense of smell before? Or is it just an anomaly that that for me, and or am I just noticing it more now when I hear music on the radio? When I have memories specific to my dad, I have memories specific to really close friends who passed away. Even my memories, like at holiday time, have to do with singing or music. And so, did I not have? I have virtually no sense of smell. I have a little bit of taste. I was listening to the parosmia discussion, and it sort of maybe gives me hope, because every now and again, now for me, it's been, I guess, maybe 4 years. Every now and again, I get a whiff of something terrible that I can't find the source, so I don't think it's real. But I guess that's my question. Are some people just more sensitive to other things to begin with?
So first of all, just wanted to let you know that I did a study a number of years ago comparing memories triggered by music versus memories triggered by smell. And on average, memories triggered by smell were more emotionally potent, more vivid, and so forth. However, this is on average, and there's a lot of individual variability, and certain people have, a very special personal connection and the meaningfulness of music. It's like some people are sort of naturally, musically inclined. They're more musical. They can become, talented musicians. Other people, completely don't have any of that skill set, and potentially also that's connected to how, music sort of speaks to you or sings to you. So definitely you could just be someone who, for you, music really is the sensory experience that really activates, emotional, meaningful memories for you. Now, it could also be, and who knows, that prior to your smell loss, smell wasn't as significant to you because it wasn't as powerful in terms of your sensitivity, just baseline sensitivity. But I would say, because of the work that I've done in this area, most people have no real idea about how sensitive they were to smells, before they lost it. It's just like, I just didn't care because why did I need to worry about smell when, I can see and I can hear? So, having an awareness of what your sense of smell was like, it could have been perfectly, just perfectly normal. It could have been, slightly below normal, but I would guess actually that most likely it was normal, and that just, your attention wasn't geared towards smell because you didn't feel it, there was a need to be, and that you're just a musically oriented person. And that's good. I mean, the fact that you can still have that is actually great. So the fact that you have, your fully intact sense of hearing, that music really has this emotional, powerful, personal connection for you, that you're a leg up on people who have the loss of those memories triggered by smell that they can't get anymore. I mean, for example, me, my biggest fear over this whole COVID period has been, if I lost my sense of smell, I don't know what I do. I mean, and I've always been someone, even like well before the whole biology, trying to figure out how to sort of marry psychology and biology and figure out a way to go about it. I mean, since I was a little kid, I was always smelling stuff. I was always been really sensory, like squeezing the bread. My mother would be screaming at me, smelling all the spices, smelling things all the time. So, for me, that's been part of my life since I can remember. And just like potentially for you, music being part of your life. I think most people, go about their life not really paying attention to the sense of smell, but they still get a tremendous, dramatic impact from losing it.
I think I've had a tremendous impact. I like to cook. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't care about smell. I cared a lot. It took me a long time to come to grips with things after I lost my sense of smell. But it was the memories that it's just sort of funny, anecdotally, because just, I don't know, for me, music is just more connected to memories. I guess that's a relief in some ways.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I only have hearing in one ear. So, and that may be, since that's been for a long time, I may have really focused on that more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Marge, for your question. Is there anyone else from the audience who has a question that they'd like to ask? I want to give the opportunity. Linda?
Yeah, it's not so much a question. I was just, again, going back to the congenital and acquired. I tend to get overwhelmed with visual things at the same time too. And sometimes I think, if I had a sense of smell, and I get this smell, and I get that smell, and I get this other smell coming in, how does my brain cope with it? So people who go through their life saying, I smell this, and then I smell that, it amazes me that you don't get overwhelmed with the bombardment of all these smells, because I cannot deal with it visually. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment, Linda.
Sort of a complete speculation answer here on my part, but I think that, when you have access to all of your senses, and whatever that might be, whether it's 4 senses or 5 senses or whatever, you've figured out over your lifespan how to integrate the information that's coming in through all of those different modalities, and it kind of combines for most of the time in ways that are meaningful and not overwhelming. And I think that possibly, I'm not, depending upon how you focused on different aspects of your experiences of the world sensorily, that maybe sometimes things become more acute in one domain than they might be otherwise. So, but I would say that people who have, whatever, their 5 senses activating all the time, that it's just integrated and it's not particularly overwhelming. Although I do think with visual things, like strobe lights and things like that, that can definitely set people off. So, visual activation can be, for many people, a little overwhelming. I mean, I know people who have a hard time even going to watch movies because the big screen is sort of too overwhelming. So, and I think that may be just like, a variation on normal of, people who are sensitive to visual stimuli and maybe have a predisposition. Sometimes migraine is connected to that, other kinds of things. So, but I think that if you had a sense of smell, you'd be fine. You wouldn't be overwhelmed.
It would be your normal, yeah. So Dr. Herz, it looks like we have a question for you from Philip. So Philip, if you want to ask your question. And I think you're still on mute. So if you want to unmute first.
Is that
There
good?
you go. Yep, that's good.
I just feel like, man, how come there's no guys on here with me, on this. But I'm a real big advocate for awareness. Jennifer knows, we've talked for many years, because I first had my loss in 2014 from a virus, and then I got pretty much a lot of it back. And then the COVID, I had that in January, and lost my sense of smell again. And it's like Chrissy, right? She's had it 4 times, I think. And I've known Chrissy for a long time as well. And I have had a couple things happen. I wrote a book in 2012 about, I was paralyzed in a car wreck. It's called Follow Your Heart. And my statement was, and I think it really hit Jennifer when I said, I would have rather been paralyzed to lose my sense of smell and taste. I mean, I have experienced that, just like what Dr. Hertz. I mean, she smelled, and she, as a kid growing up, and I mean, there's people that will say, and maybe the statistics I just heard about, well, people would rather not, they would rather not lose their hair than, or what was it? They'd rather, they'd rather have their hair than lose their sense of smell and taste. And I'm like going, really? And she made the statement, really that statement was, hey, I love to smell too. I did. And I've experienced both. I can tell you that, all this stuff that everyone's going through, even right here when we're talking, it's just, we need to find a cure. That's what we really need to do. We were born, and like Linda's is congenial. So, I mean, that part of it, I've experienced it. She hasn't. So it's not as much impact, but I know she wants to smell like we all have had and do. And that's what I'm really advocating, awareness. I've had one doctor tell me, I said something about my voodoo, he said, I said, well, is maybe the essential oils that I'm smelling, is that what's bothering me? He says, Phil, I know nothing about voodoo. I went to Columbia School. I'm a professor at UW. And that's the kind of shit, excuse my language, that we are faced with, even with family. They're telling you, I'm nuts. I mean, smell is intangible. You don't see it. Human beings want to know what their environment is. And if they lose that, then this brings on a lot of mental stuff, depression, you don't know. And I would say the majority of the people that I've talked to have had that. I mean, that's what it brings up. It's emotionally intrinsic in being a human being. And it's wonderful to smell.
Yeah, I mean, I can say 2 things. One, I mean, I don't know if you've read my book, The Scent of Desire, yet, but
I have.
okay, so the story of Michael Hutchins that I even begin with, that's like sort of, my most startling example in a way of the dramatic impact of smell loss. But just to say something positive, there is a lot going on right now about methods for recovery and treatments and potentially real cures. So I think that I'm hopeful that within some period of time, I don't want to say 5 years, but I think that within a not too long period of time, there will be real things way beyond smell training that can actually be done to really have an impact on getting people to have a sense of smell back. I mean, I don't know, like for instance, Fifth Sense is working with a group in the UK right now that is looking extremely promising. Bob Data at Harvard's doing things that look extremely promising. So there's different methods that are being worked out, but I think that there's real hope. So I think that the sense of smell will have a mechanism through which it can be regained, at least for a certain proportion of people.
Right. And I hope the people that we have aren't looking at it like, well, 5 years down the road, I'm going to get, no, I want people that are on this to think about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's have that passion to get it done. I smell now, I taste. I don't taste, right, because I'm one of these guys that goes, well, it's still not right. So you're just freaking out, right? You go, it's still not right. But I mean, that's what kind of crap the smell and taste is. It's so important. And I agree, man. It's like, I think that's why I'm a community leader with Absent. I'm always giving inspiration and hope. That's what Follow Your Heart, my book, does. It's all about inspiration and hope. There's, it's that foundation of support and having people that care and that people aren't going to put up with, you know, stuff like if they tell you, well, I don't know about voodoo. Really?
Right.
That's
Well,
not
thank
cool.
you so much for sharing, Philip. I hope I'm with you too. I think that we're making really great progress these days, and we need more progress. So Dr. Herz, in light of the time, I did want to end with asking you about your other books that you've written. So if you want to share with us about what else you have written, and then we can also put in the chat some information about our next upcoming book club in May. So Dr. Herz, do you want to talk about your other books that you've written and kind of shout out so we can go and read those ones as well?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's been an honor to be part of this group today and to, talk with all of you. And I hope that I've been some kind of help in some small way. So The Scent of Desire was my first book. After that, I actually wrote a book called That's Disgusting. And it's all about the emotion of disgust. And disgust is actually a taste-based emotion. So it's connected to, I've done research in the sense of taste as well, not just smell. So, and emotion sort of being the fiber that connects all of this. So it's an exploration into the emotion of disgust. And actually, similar to smell, you have to learn to be disgusted, just like we have to learn our responses to various smells. You actually have to learn to be disgusted and what disgusts you. So there's a sort of a fundamental theoretical connection between smell and disgust. Independent of smells being disgusting to certain people at certain times. But the third book that I've written, which is most recent, is called Why You Eat What You Eat, the science behind our relationship with food. And in this book, I talk about a whole variety of things connected to our experience of food and the meaning of food and what it's like, and going from the sensory to the psychological to the social and the cultural and neuroscience and all of that. But I actually also follow someone else, just like in The Scent of Desire, I have someone who's lost her sense of smell and follow her through the book. In Why You Eat What You Eat, I also follow someone. His name is Stan, so it's a man, not a woman this time. And that's not his real name though. And how his life, and particularly his life with food, is impacted, and what he's done, and methods to try to create, a better experience with food and so forth. And some of you have already talked about, texture and so forth. So there is anosmic related information in Why You Eat What You Eat as well.
Perfect. And how can people follow you on social media?
So I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm at Rachel_Herz at Twitter, and LinkedIn is something similar. It's just my name. And I have a website as well, www.rachelherz.com, and all the ways to contact me you can find through that as well. I have a contact page and all things I'm doing generally. I don't have this particular talk up on my website yet, but in any case, maybe when I have the video from this, I'll actually put a link to attach it once it's on YouTube. So that would be great.
Yeah, perfect. So everyone who's joined today, thank you so much for coming and for your great conversation and chats with Dr. Herz. Please follow her on social media, check out her website. You can also follow STANA, Smell and Taste Association of North America. We're at STANA.org on all of the different things. This will be posted eventually on our YouTube channel, probably within the next week or so. You can come back and watch it again if you would like to. And then, like Pamela posted in the chat, we are having another book club conversation in May. Follow us on our social media pages for more information about that. So thank you all so much for coming today, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.